Welcome to our next lecture. This is Chapter 12, Lecture 3. In this lecture, we will be discussing the islands of New Zealand in our continuing discussion of Australia, New Zealand, and the Pacific Island region. New Zealand consists of two main islands, the North Island and the South Island. The population, the largest population is on the smaller island, the North Island. The entire set of islands is located entirely within a temperate zone, creating wonderful temperatures, not too hot, not tropical, not dry, and not too cold. The islands of New Zealand were formed through the Ring of Fire, of course, the series of tectonic plates and troughs that have created many islands, including that of New Zealand, but also provides natural hazards such as earthquakes and volcanoes. The island was discovered by Captain James Cook in 1769. Currently, 80% of the population have European origins of British, German, or Greek ancestry. The Maori are the indigenous population of New Zealand. They are a Polynesian group that has resided in New Zealand for over 1,000 years. Their language and spiritual beliefs altered even greater from the rest of the Polynesian Maori population due to the distance and isolation of being located in New Zealand. The long decline of the Maori population has occurred under European settlement after the Treaty of Waitangi was signed in 1840. There has been an upsurge and increase in the population total since 1970s. There are still aspects of the Maori that make them socio-economically marginal in terms of employment, health, not so much education differences, but employment aspects tend to have lower value jobs than the European population. New Zealand settlement and politics. Historically, New Zealand has been distinguished by progressive politics. The Maori have held seats in Parliament since 1867. Women have had the right to vote here since 1893. New Zealand has been a nuclear-free zone since 1987 and has put it at odds with the United States since that time, due to the fact that so many naval ships from the United States are actually nuclear-powered vessels. Free trade policies were introduced in 1984, making New Zealand the first Western nation to sign a free trade agreement with China. It has strong tourist industry with skiing and other mountain sports proving quite popular and providing it a strong tourist industry. New Zealand could be described as a pastoral economy. There is the production of livestock and livestock products. There refrigerated shipping that started in the 1890s, igniting huge food exports, first to Britain and then to a number of other places around the world. It has one of the highest proportions of livestock to human populations, with a sheep and cattle to human population ratio of 14 livestock to each one human. It has a heavy dependence on trade, some coal, gold, natural gas, and iron ore, but much less in terms of these natural resources than Australia. It has extensive soil erosion due to the clearing of slopes for livestock pastures. How does its remote location impact its ability to function economically? Remoteness and isolation generally raise transportation and communication cost. Even in this day of instant communications, and keep in mind that supporting the instant communication capabilities in a place as remote as New Zealand is more expensive, creating higher value or a higher expense to have this form of communication, such as telephone, internet, or any of these types of services. Small population and great distance. The two factors together reduce profits from exports and increase the cost of imports. Hence, New Zealand's manufacturing industries are largely import substitution operations serving its domestic market. Although the value of its pastoral products is generally high due to the high quality of the product, they are low value added relative to manufactured goods and tertiary services. Nonetheless, a remote and isolated location promotes self-sufficiency, which can be rewarding and socially valuable. These characteristics also add value to New Zealand's tourist industry in a sort of a form of export to these foreign visitors. They have an important need to diversify their economy. Australia is currently their largest trade partner and also their closest trade partner. If we look at land use resources we see much of the west coast of the South Island is in forestry and has some silver, gold, and iron. The remainder of the island in the south has commercial grain farming to the south and southeast coasts, and the central part of the island and up to the northeast are ranching livestock regions. Also, tungsten is a mineral available in the South Island. As for the North Island, there is commercial grain farming to the far north and to the south. There is also some natural gas between the two islands. The central part, the higher elevations of the North Island are forested, and the central part of the island is where a large amount of the ranching occurs. If we look at the political structure, we have the North Island and the South Island. We see the larger cities of Auckland, Hamilton, and Wellington forming the higher population locations. In the North Island, plus a number of smaller cities, we have Christchurch and Dunedin on the South Island, much smaller cities compared to those on the North Island. And finally, for population density, this brings out and really shows that the larger population density, although it is not dense population by any stretch of the imaginations, are on the North Islands, with only Dunedin and Christchurch having the larger populations in the South Island. That's it for our discussion of New Zealand. We'll move on to the rest of the Pacific Islands in our following lecture. Thanks for being here.